track plan is quite simple, but I think when you think about if I've got 5 or 6 trains and what I want them to do in terms of load and so on, then yeah, I think there's more than enough to do here, yeah. I always wanted figures on the layout, obviously, but I like this idea of little cameos, because a lot of layouts you see there's too much in one place and there's nothing in another. But if you go for this, as I say, little cameo idea, it seems to work. It's quite convincing. My name's Bob Horden and this is my 7mm layout, Kirtley Bridge. It's not a real place, but it's very much like MC or Pateley Bridge, which are stations that were once here in the Dales. There's lots of products on the market that you can use, but it's finding the right one, and some are better than others. I've tried rippled perspex for the flat water, for the mill pond, and I've tried mixes of various some things that you would boil up and pour, some which are resins that set as soon as the air gets to them, and I think I've got a nice mix now. Because I was a geography and geology teacher, sitting by the river, if you like, you're aware of things like rocks and the way water moves, so it would be sort of nice to try and have the riverbed built before you actually put the river in on top of it. There's about 5 years work here, and it went slowly to start with, but then when I retired a couple of years ago, it's gone much faster now. I've got a range of locos. They are all what would have been ex-Midland Railway, and because my layout is supposedly in the 1930s, everything is now rebranded LMS. So that's the sort of things that I've got. I've got passenger stock, I've got goods stock, and I've got a private owner little quarry train that comes out as well. It's not a real place, but it's very much like MC or Pateley Bridge, which are stations that were once here in the Dales. I think knowing the scenery that I wanted, and then organising the baseboards to fit both the railway and the scenery. So I had to think about which bits would be cut out and which bits would be flat and solid, and that was quite difficult. A lot of planning in the first year or so, I think. Yeah, virtually everything in terms of buildings is scratch built. Rolling stock is kit built. The one thing I've not really ventured into is building locos for myself. I think that's quite hard, but I might get round to that. The 6 boards really, if you like, the village is the first one, and I've got scenes like a churchyard and a chapel and things like that. Then I've got the station area, then I've got the, if you like, the area with the water in it, then I've got the mill, then we've got the viaduct across the stream, and finally we've got the quarry at the far end. And the quarry at the far end hides the fiddle yard where all the locos and things are coming from. Going up to 7mm, I think, in O gauge, I think the thing for that really was that I could put more detail into it. And I suppose as my eyesight got worse, it might be easier to do, although people say it's not the same. I also would like to have captured different bits of the scenery around here. So I've got some limestone, I've got some millstone grit, and I've got different activities along the layout. So it's actually poplar bark. We had a very large poplar in the garden that needed to come down, and I thought, so I put all that away and dried it for a year, and it's turned out to be quite good. I like it. I think it's quite convincing. All I would say is that I like the idea that my layout is in almost 6 little pieces, and there's a transition down both in the sort of scenery, the sort of buildings, and what actually goes on. and that was very much in my mind when I designed it. The lucky thing for me was that I found a back scene at the back of the layout that really fits it, and not many people can sort of find the one they want. I bought it for an old layout and I never used it, but it's the perfect thing now.
Looking through this month's issue of BRM, I spotted that Ebridge Mill has a rather nice little canal basin. Now, I'm familiar with canal basins. There's several around me, and I'm not very far away from Birmingham, which famously has more canals than Venice. So I thought, for this month's project, it'd be rather nice to build a boat. Now, canals have changed a lot. For the modern day, it's really a leisure place. So I thought it'd be great to build a little leisure boat, a small cabin cruiser, and to do that I'm actually using a very traditional kit, Craftline Models balsa wood kit. Now, I started my model making with a big bag of balsa wood, so it's a material I'm fairly familiar with, but I'll be honest, I suspect most people simply don't use it that often. Anyway, let's have a look at the kit. The first thing is you get some printed sides and ends for your boat, a set of instructions, and most importantly, some bits of balsa. Now, the two main parts, the cabin is shaped for you. The hull, well, that's not very hull shaped, but at least there's a slot in it, which we'll use in a minute. And they take the tiller to the top, so we'll put that aside for later. The most exciting bit is the pile of balsa wood parts. Now, we don't use all of these for this kit, but they are all printed onto a single sheet of balsa. So the first job actually is to start cutting things out. For this, all you're going to need is a sharp knife, and it is important to use a sharp knife for this balsa because it will tend to split along the grain. This isn't the end of the world if this happens, because you can always glue the parts back together, but the sharper the knife, the less split and less damage that you'll find. So, following the instructions, which I have read in advance, I haven't just unpacked this kit, I need to cut out part A, and part A is clearly marked. And don't go through the balsa in one go, go through several times. Again, you can hear it splitting there, but there you are, that's cut out. And then slowly cut around the edges. And I'll just finish this, and then we'll move on to the next step. The great thing about the sharp knife is you really can feel it slicing through the balsa wood, which is very, very soft indeed. Although pedants will explain that technically this is actually a hardwood. For our purposes, it's flipping soft. Keep your fingers away from it. It's really easy to go mad. And then there's some little part to cut out at the end. And we have to cut out fiddly work here. We actually have to cut out the centre of this part. Now this is where the wood really can split, because you've got very little meat there to hold the part together. I say don't worry, because this is going to stick onto another block of wood, and you can always stick the two parts, if you broke it in half, onto the piece of wood. You can guess how I know that one. Okay, there we have it. Actually, mine has split. Balsa wood does come in various qualities, and so it's probably not your fault. It could just be that the wood actually isn't very strong. So there we are. I now have one part that should actually be, one part that has come up in three pieces. Never mind. The correct glue for balsa is, amazingly, balsa cement, which smells slightly. So don't use this in a particularly small room, but it's a great fast-acting cement. I've put a bit much on the wood there, but it doesn't matter. It dries very, very quickly, and is also useful for card kits, if you're, you can see I'm just reassembling the jigsaw here. If you're building a card kit, it will actually glue the card kit together as well. But there we are, right. And that's the first part now. What you can see is this is actually the bow of the boat, the bow being the front part. Nautical term there, stern being the back end of it. You've got the bow of the boat here, and once this is dried, what I'll do is I'll have to shape the block of balsa to fit around it. So, if I just hang on for a minute, we'll let that dry, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, while I've been letting the glue dry, I've cut out the other two parts I shall need for this boat. So quite a lot of these parts relate to a different kit. That's why most of them aren't used. Anyway, the glue has dried. That's now nice and firmly on the top there. And I need to shape the bow. Now the great thing about this kit is you don't need very many tools. A knife, a small saw, and a couple of sanding sticks are all that is required for this. So I'm just going to roughly hack the front end off the boat. Now you could do this, if I'm honest, with a knife. It's just a bit quicker and easier and slightly safer with a saw. But again, you can see how soft this wood is. And then I'm going to take a fairly coarse sanding stick, a bit of emery paper, some sandpaper, anything will do this job, and just give the front of the boat a quick shape. It's worth looking at some photos of canal boats when you do this, because they're not completely flat. You actually need to put a bit of champ around the bottom of the hull as well. I'm not going to worry too much about getting this perfect at this stage, because there's a little bit more sanding to do, and I'll come to that in a moment. But there we have it. We've got the rough shape of the boat there. Now there is a bit more. You're probably wondering what the slot is there. There is a piece to go in there as well to form the very tip of the bow. There's one more job to do once I've shaped the bow, and that is to chamfer this top part so that there's a slight rise to the next part that goes on top of it. Again, a few seconds with the sanding stick. A bit of dust, and there we are. Ready for the next part, so I can finish building up the bow. In effort to use less glue, hold the tube, and this works with plastic glue as well, hold the tube horizontal and hold the part near it. It doesn't all come out all over the place. And there we have it, the two parts there. Just push them down slightly, and there we go. Next job is to fit the cabin, which is, as you can see, quite a large lump, slightly shaped, a bit more balsa glue on the bottom there, and stick that into place. Followed by the stern of the boat, stern being the back end of the boat, another nautical term there. Fits in behind the cabin. Now you see the glue's not completely rock solid yet, so I've got a bit of wiggle room, but pretty quickly I've built up the basic boat shape. Now I'm going to have to shape the stern in the same way that I've shaped the bow, but there's a little bit more work to do, and then I will then sand this bottom bit for the hull is very slightly too wide as well, so I'll sand that back. Here's one I did earlier. As you can see, I've stuck all the bits of balsa into place now. The bow is now finished, as is the stern, and the cabin's been fitted on with a couple of hatches on top. The next stage is to paint the boat, but if I just stick paint straight onto this, balsa will swell, the grain will be raised, and it'll go all furry and horrible. That's not going to look very pretty, because these things should be nice and smooth. So what I need to do is I need to seal the wood surface, and to do that I'm going to use a product that older modelers may well be familiar with, but I suspect most modern modelers never come into contact with, and that is something called sanding sealer. Sanding sealer is a sort of cellulose dope with a filler in. I think it's often talcum powder effectively, and what this does, you paint it on and it smells, so don't do this in the confined spaces. Our camera crew are already getting slightly wobbly, but paint it on and it soaks into the wood and it will seal the surface. You'll need to wash the brush out. I tend to use an old brush on this, but you'll need to wash the brush out with cellulose thinners as well when you're working on it. But this stuff dries incredibly quickly and you get to the stage where the wood is nicely sealed. And the idea is that I'll paint the entire boat, seal the boat, and then once it's dry, I'll sand the surface. And so once it's dry, I can actually sand it to a pretty mirror-like finish if I'm willing to put the effort in. To be honest, what I tend to do is just give it a light work over with a fairly smooth sanding stick, give it a second coat, and again, polish it up so it's ready for paint. You'll actually be able to feel the surface being really, really smooth. It's difficult to describe, but it's quite incredible when you actually use it. Sanding seal is cheap enough, and it's actually very useful if you're doing any wooden modelling. Seal the surface and it will take paint an awful lot better. So the next stage is to paint your model. Now I've just used perfectly ordinary Humbrol enamels on this, a couple of coats, and you can see I've given the hull a nice coat of black. Canal boats are traditionally black down there, and then some brighter colours for the top, because a lot of the decoration is actually done for you on the decoration sheet. And so all I have to do is cut out the various bits of decoration and stick them on the side of the boat. Let's start with one of the sides. Again, sharp knife, steel rule, keep your fingers back and quickly whip that out. And there's two sides and 3 ends, because you can have some alternative front panels for the boat, so you can have a bit of variety with your between your models if you build more than one. So there we are. These aren't stickers, they are just printed paper, and it's important to do a little dry run with them before you fit them on. You notice I've painted the ends red because I know from previous experience that this bit of paper isn't quite long enough and there's just a little gap at the corners. And this is something you'll often find people mention with card kits, is that the edges will be exposed. Find the nearest match you can and just run along the edges with an appropriate colour. Doesn't have to be a perfect match. It's really a case of just hiding the white edges. And I say this is quite important if you're doing any card kit buildings. Again, hide the white edges because that really shows up to the eye. Whereas if it's something near the right colour, your eye will tend to ignore it. And I can now stick this onto the side of the boat. Sticking the sanding sealer, the balsa glue might do it, but to be honest, it's probably just as easy to use a general purpose glue. And just work a little bit of that on there. Smear it around with your finger. Do try not then to touch the printed paper with the finger you've been smearing glue with. And there we go. Decoration, and it's nice and quick, nice and simple, and there we have a nice quick decorated boat side. What I'll do is I'll work my way around the other sides, leaving only one job, and that is almost the most exciting bit, and that is to put the tiller in place. For that, a little brass pre-formed tiller is provided, which should fit about there. You can just push it in, but I prefer just to give it a poke with a sharp bradawl and poke it in that way. Handy canal hint: when boats are parked at the side of the river, the tiller is usually pushed over to one side, partly because that's how they've steered, but also because it makes it a lot easier to get in and out. So there are a little bit more finishing, and I can show you one I finished earlier. Ready for my little canal basin scene. And there we have it. One simple, cheap, and very attractive and colourful addition to your layout. Hello, Anne.
Oh, hello, Howard. Well, I can see you've got lots of things on today at your shop at Great Eastern Models. Tell us a little bit about what we're going to see.
We're having a special scenery day.
Okay.
So for our customers, we're showing everybody how to do things, how to make rocks, trees, all different aspects of model railway.
Wow, brilliant idea.
Would you like to come and have a look?
Sure,
Come and
lead
see
the
what
way.
We're doing? Follow me.
So I guess it's taken quite a lot of organising to put on an event like this.
It has, but we're very, very lucky because all our customers are great friends of ours. There's some great modellers in Norfolk, and everybody I asked was very pleased to come and help.
It's brilliant.
It was a little idea that we came up with. Basically, this is an A4 sheet, take on the A4 engine. And we've invited customers to just literally come and have a go. It's completely free of charge. Use all the scrap bits and pieces that we've got left over from different exhibitions and make something on an A4 board.
That's good. So they get to take this home with them, I guess, at the end of the day?
They get to take it home, and the best one wins a bottle of wine. Can't be
Sounds good to
bad.
me.
Win-win situation.
Coming here and talking to fellow modellers, I think it's a very good experience. It gives you a lot of, you can talk about things that you're not quite sure about, and you can get ideas. For instance, I was talking to a chap who's ballasting, and he said, when you ballast, just tap it down and let all the ballast go in, and I didn't know that, so I've learned something today. You see, it's encouraging. Brilliant hobby. I encourage anybody to get into it. Even ladies and young people, go for it. It's great. It can be very relaxing. I hope they do it again. I hope it encourages other model shops to do the same. It's nice to know that magazines like British Railways Modelling are doing DVDs. That gives encouragement, hands-on encouragement. Yeah, I encourage anybody to go for it as a hobby.
Here we've got Paul from Train Terrain. He's demonstrating the polystyrene cutter, how to do scenery,
Okay.
the woodland scenic subterranean
Yep.
tunnels,
So using some of the silicone moulds
using
there
some
and
of the rock
how
moulds,
to make rocks.
painting the items, and basically showing people in stages how to get from a flat baseboard
Yeah.
to a sculptured and realistic finish.
Yeah.
Great Eastern Models is a family-run shop, and for this event the upper floor was transformed and open to the public with numerous layouts on display. Sharing knowledge is so important within the hobby, and that's why days like this are important for customers and the model shop alike. It's a shame more model shops don't organise such events because everybody's a winner. Customers and friends get together and learn something new, and the shop sees more people through the door. We're seeing different model shops diversify to keep modellers coming back, whether it's specialising in DCC fitting or becoming weathering specialists, but sometimes simple ideas like this work just as well.
We do all local exhibitions within the East Anglia area. Basically, our aim is to get people into the shop because there's very few model shops around nowadays, so it's to get people in to the shops. Most of the time we're selling products, we're selling boxes to people. Today we wanted to show people how to do their scenery and really just come and have a fun day, come and enjoy it.
Basically, our dad started the company about 30 years ago, and then we're the second generation, so me and my two sisters, and we now run it full time.
This is our first scenery day. It's been absolutely fabulous. The feedback has been superb, so we will be doing another scenery day same time next year. Prior to that, we did a digital day where we invited some specialist dealers to come along. Same sort of thing, customers would come in, they could ask the dealers and the representatives, how does it work, can I go digital, special offers on controllers. So our digital day is on the 1st of December. and that is very, very popular. Well, we advertise all our events in all the major magazines. We also have a Facebook page, a website, and our shop is open Tuesday to Saturday, 9:30 till 4:30. Give us a ring, give us a visit.
So that's it for this issue, but take a look at our extras menu for an exclusive 30-minute DMU cab ride along the Ecclesbourne Valley Railway. And if you'd like to see more of our layout of the month, Kirtley Bridge, download this issue as a digital edition as Andy York goes behind the scenes.
We had the lunch in York, so you had to remember, because I fired it, fire out, had to remember.
You might just have to move that over a bit, that's it.
To close it down. Also, we had to be quite careful with summer. We didn't have any problems then, so hopefully we won't get into any problems. So this is the A6 bridge here.
Right.
So this is the A6 bridge here.
Today I'm with driver Jim Abbott on the Ecclesbourne line, and we're going to take a complete trip the whole length of the line and have a little bit of a chat about a few things we see along the way. Hopefully it's a fairly unusual view. Most people don't get to have a look out of the front of the DMU as we're going, and we'll talk a little bit about the history of the line, and there's some interesting stuff. There's some interesting sights to be seen. Jim, let's look talk a little bit about your history. You've actually got quite a long connection with this particular railway.
Yes, yeah. Mid-60s, started on the railway as an engine cleaner, fireman. I had to go away to Hitchin in Hertfordshire to get a driving job. I was down there 12 years, then came back to Derby and finished up my career as a driver instructor at Derby.
And you actually drove. Well, you fired on this
Yeah,
particular
my first trip up this branch was in 1966, and we had a Class 8 steam engine.
Certainly, you'd never have thought at the time that you'll eventually end up driving magazine people up and down here in a DMU.
Never in a million years. No.
Because I mean, this line is relatively recent as far as a preserve railway goes. In 2000, they were busy digging out the trees from where we are at the moment.
Yeah. It was quite late. It was in use up until about 1989. So it was a late one to close. So therefore, it became available a lot later.
Yes, and phenomenal amount of work done in a really quick time. I mean, we're looking now at some very nice permanent way. But I understand. I mean, we're on 60-foot sections of track, but there's actually continuous welded rail along parts of this as well.
Yes, but they've had to cut it up into sections
because
they haven't got the equipment to do the de-stressing and that sort of thing.
Yes,
that you need to do.
Continuous welded rail. You actually have to stress it to allow for the expansion and contraction, don't you?
Yeah.
But I have to say, it's a much more historic railway feel as we're bouncing over the rail joints.
Yes, yeah. I think the passengers like to hear the clickety-click of the coaches going over the joints. That's part of the experience that they don't get now on the main line.
No, and of course we're going through lovely rural scenery. We've got a particularly good day. We've been very lucky with the weather for it, and you're not going along this as a commuter route.
No.
Quite impressive from that point of view.
Yes, Yes, you'll see Derbyshire countryside at its best today.
We're just going over a farm crossing at the moment, and there's quite a number of these along the line.
Yeah.
As a driver, presumably you have to really know your route and keep an eye open for people hurling themselves across with a tractor.
That's right. Yeah, you know the bad spots where they're likely to suddenly drive out in front of you. Yeah.
Yes. Although to be fair, the trees haven't been cut back as much. Must make that life a little bit easier.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing has really been cleared for a phenomenal amount of effort. What are we coming into now then?
Hazelwood Station, or as was. It's closed in 1947, with the rest of them closed to passages in 1947. I think it was owned for freight for a little while longer. So station building was on the left-hand side.
Yes, I mean, actually, amazingly, it's amazing the number of station buildings that do still exist. But this is now a woodyard, looking at the at the overspill here.
That's right.
And I'm told it used to be a
riding
school, hence the horse on the side of the. And that's obviously a footpath crossing that we've just gone over.
There's dozens of them.
Yeah. No need to sound a horn or anything for those.
No, we only sound if there's anybody on or about the crossing.
Basically, get out of the way. I can't stop. Going back to your history a little bit, Jim, one of the things that was mentioned is that you had a little bit of work on the APT, which of course a number of our readers are very familiar with now, with the Rapino rule having come out in the last couple of years. Presumably a very, very different life.
On the APT?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we did some testing on the test track at Old Alby on it and that sort of thing. But it was very much an everyday event for us, really. It was just, at Derby Depot, we had a lot of research work. We went on everything, HSTs, APTs, any new traction that come out. We all had a little go on it when it was going through its testing period. Or its acceptance period, yeah.
I mean, presumably did that add to the job, or it was just, oh God, another new unit I've got to learn or something?
Oh, it made the job more interesting. I think that what they suffer for now, if anything, is monotony. They're doing the same thing all the time. You know, when we were sort of VR drivers as such, you turned up, you didn't know what you was going to do, especially when I first started as a fireman. One day you'd have a steam engine, next day you'd have a diesel. You didn't know what was going to turn up, so you just adjusted accordingly. Well, it made the job quite interesting. Whereas now they have the same traction, same routes. Used to being in the centre of the country, we could go all over the place, in all different directions, all points of the compass.
That's interesting. I'd always assumed you'd basically be on the same routes.
No, all over the place.
Right, so yeah. So you've actually, I mean, you've travelled the country from Derby, effectively.
Yes, Newcastle, Bristol, London, Leeds, Manchester, Lincoln, Crewe, all over.
Now we're coming up again, coming up to another station.
This is Shottle, which is our passing point when we run 2 trains.
Because it's certainly a busy line. I mean, we're here on a Thursday, and you've had to put a 2 rather than a 1 car unit on, so it's certainly busy even during the week.
Yeah.
And the new wooden platform in,
Yeah.
and another station building, which I'm told that's actually owned by Peak Oil, who hence the tanks in the side.
That's right, yeah.
Permanent way train sat here, guys working away with it. The Sentinel on the front.
Yeah, Rolls Royce Sentinel.
Thomas Hill.
And again, maintained by volunteers. I think it's important to say with these sort of things. It's all this work's going on. And as I say, we're here in the middle of the week, and there's guys out maintaining the track. A signal box or a signal cabin sat at the side of the track. Presumably, the intention is to replace some of the ground frames with a more central signalling system.
That's the idea, yes. Yeah, make it a lot easier when we're running 2 trains. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's an awful lot of hopping out. Somebody has to hop out and throw levers.
That's right.
Regularly.
Yeah. Badger set there on your right hand side.
Yeah.
Another of our hazards.
Yes. I mean, it must. I mean, part of the thing with this is a constant battle against against nature and all the elements, isn't it?
Yeah. It doesn't take long to revert back to nature.
No. Here's some of the welded rail section, isn't
That's
it?
right. Yeah.
It's been cut up into 120-foot lengths. But you can hear the difference.
Yeah.
Just from
concrete sleepers as well.
The concrete sleepers must be a boom, because I understand there's about 400 sleepers a year being replaced.
Yeah.
So anything that saves a lot of work there has got to be a benefit. But again, must have been a major job putting it down in the first place. But
you need mechanical equipment. Concrete sleepers, it's difficult to manhandle.
Hence all the wooden sleep.
Yeah.
Hence you're not doing a wholesale replacement to match with this. It's because of the wooden sleepers. Again,
you can change wooden sleepers by hand, but concrete sleepers are too heavy.
Yes, being told earlier that apparently just before the line opened, some of the rail had to be swapped from side to side because of the wear on it. And again, it's that on a preserved railway, that's a big manual process. We just haven't, you don't get the benefit of all the equipment. Several happy days with crowbarring bits of metal around. Right, board coming up. That's warning for distance.
Distance for either J.
See that the platform is actually at the original Midland height with a raised section at the end to bring it closer to the to the carriages for people getting on and off.
Conflict between health and safety and heritage.
It's a heck of a drop, though, isn't it? And again, this building is still existent, but privately owned at the moment.
They're all privately owned, yeah.
Sorry?
What are you putting on the concrete?
Just a little shed for people to sit in when they're going to do the gate duty.
Because they were going to put the signal box up.
Not at the moment,
No,
because we can't find a suitable signal box,
they can't.
unfortunately. It's unlocked. I assume you want the lock on this side when we finish. For when you're coming down.
Yeah, I mean I can reach out beyond it.
After a little pause and a camera change, off we go again. Now the gates are now manually operated, but this structure on the right, I'm told, it was a BR experiment for solar-powered crossing gates.
It was, yes. It was an open crossing, there was no gate.
Oh right, just the thing with the railway is converted it back into. Yeah. But the guy who's got out and done this, he's actually a third man on the train.
Train, that's correct, yeah.
So we're going to have to pull up to let him back on again.
That's right. There used to be a crossing frame more than a crossing box there. And there used to be a lady living in that house that worked the signals, used proper signals, distance signals, stop signals. And you didn't have all this messing about, you just went straight up the branch. We came up here one Saturday morning, the train of empties for Worksmith. Eventually the distance was on and it was snowing a blizzard. And stopped in the platform, whistled up, no sign of any crossing keeper. Anyway, I got off the engine and walked towards the crossing keeper's house. Bedroom window opens. I'm not coming out in this lot, you have to do it yourself. So that was the end of that, so we had to do our own crossing gates, and that was the start of it, really. So yeah, that's it. All the crossings had signal boxes and proper crossing keepers, and so you had a straight run up and down without any interference. When it was very busy in the sugar beet season, there was one train after another. By the time you got to the top inside at Worksworth, there's another one waiting to come down.
So how busy a line was it then?
As busy as it could be. As many trains as it could get up and down. Because you got all the steelworks to service, and then of course there was the sugar beet season. The final death knell really is when they closed Corby Steelworks.
Right, and that was there was the other train. Well, I mean, this was really late. And hence the but then the line pretty quickly disappeared after that.
Jay
Plenty of wildlife certainly going on. As we just seen Jay go across.
Jay,
lots of pheasants around here.
A buzzard about in a bit, around this area somewhere. I see we've had a good view of him going up, which is a pity really, but we missed him. He just flew right in front of us for some distance.
But this is, I mean, this is the atmosphere of the true country branch line, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's, yeah, we don't tend to associate it with Nellie, but I mean there are still these branches of the railway that are full of character, Liza. I can certainly see why people would, you know, take a happy Thursday morning jaunt up and down here. We're not even really into the main season yet.
No. It's a decent ride, and it goes from somewhere to somewhere. A lot of the heritage railways suffer from going from nowhere to nowhere in a very short time.
Yes,
and people can be a little bit disappointed sometimes.
I think unless you're a real railway enthusiast and just get a kick out of riding on the train,
yeah,
the going somewhere to somewhere has a huge benefit.
It has a connection with the main line as well at Duffield, so
you can actually come here by train.
Come here by train from all over the country, and then just change and up the branch.
Yeah. And you can be. I mean, you can visit it's somewhere nice. It's a nice day out, but you can do the whole thing. By rail, which is relatively unusual.
Yeah.
But certainly appeals to a lot of enthusiasts. I notice, I notice there's a big market for older people, retired people, perhaps people who are doing this for leisure. And I know a lot of Preserve Railways say this is a very important part of their finances nowadays.
Yeah. You get a lot of grandparents and grandchildren. That seems to be quite a common combination.
But why not? I mean, what a great way to get a great day out.
Yeah.
Now, is this the racing straight?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which essentially is about a mile of very, very straight track that they tested lots of the Derby lightweights on, or all the Derby lightweights.
They used to bring them up, new locomotives. They used to bring them up for photographic sessions as well, you know, because of the countryside and whatever.
Okay, so I mean, because of course when the DMUs were introduced, this was this was BR modernising. This was optimism. Yeah. We were going to save all these branch lines with this new sort of train, and I can imagine that it was certainly the marketing people even then would have said to themselves, "Hold on, we've got to take the photo somewhere, and we really don't want to take it in best will in the world, the Black Country or the back streets of Birmingham. No, nobody's going to think, oh, I'm going to go for a nice trip out there." Plenty of plate layers huts along the route as well. And the fact they've survived, okay, let's face it, nature's had this one, but they've survived surprisingly well, which shows the quality of the materials, which are well creosoted sleepers, I imagine.
Made out of old sleepers, yeah.
But the fact you can still see them even in 2017, I mean, heaven knows when that one was built.
Nasty accident on this crossing many years ago. That was in the 60s. A little child from the farm was playing on the crossing, only a couple of years old, got his leg chopped off. That was quite traumatic.
It just shows, I mean, the constant reminder of the dangers of playing on the railways.
Right, It's pretty heart-wrenching for the driver because there's nothing he can do about it.
No.
You know, he's got 800 tonne of stone pushing him down the branch, he couldn't stop.
Yes, I mean, I've talked to other drivers, and there does get a little bit of black humour about it in the end, because there is nothing you can do. But you can see everything, especially from these.
Yeah.
Sitting in front of a diesel or in front of a DMU, you can see absolutely everything.
That involved a steam engine going 10 to first. So.
Yeah.
But there was The only consolation was that the driver used to run the first aid classes at the depot, so he was pretty, you know, he saved the kid's life really, in as much as he knew what to do. The fireman had to run to the farm for the phone. I mean, there was, you know, before the days of mobile phones and that sort of thing.
Yes, you forget how much running around there actually was for the crews sometimes. You had to be pretty fit to be a fireman anyway, but you had to be quite a good runner occasionally.
There's several runaways and derailments and all sorts. It was quite an exciting branch to work.
There's quite some gradients on here. I mean, we've seen a lot of gradient posts.
It's roughly uphill on average. It averages out to about 1 in 200. This bit's 1 in 100 is about the steepest bit, but it's nice and steady. There's no nasty dips or anything like that, so it was a fairly straightforward route to work. Now we have to stop back from the crossing here because the gentleman who lives in that house has racing pigeons and he complains that the fumes from the engine upset his pigeons. So.
Well, yeah, and it's not uncommon nowadays. I know bus companies get told off very regularly that buses are idling too near things, and certainly it must be a shock to the system because the chances are you could move into this when there wasn't anything.
Yeah.
And suddenly along comes people wanting to run diesels and steam trains because you get a reason. You've got steam running on here as well.
Yes, we have. Yeah.
I mean, we're sat in the moment in a Metrocam DMU in rail blue actually, which is which I find fascinating. That I realise just how heritage that is, and yet I remember as a youth travelling around in these things. But they can be 50 years old.
Oh yeah. 60 years old.
Yes, and
some of them were older than steam engines. Some of the steam engines was younger than. They were still building steam engines when they were building these. Class 9s and all them, they were the standard 9s. They was all built after these were built.
Which is why it's quite funny. It's quite funny that as modellers, we would there's plenty of modellers who class this as modern image.
Yeah.
And it's like, couldn't be much further than the truth, really.
It was the first to come from the 55 modernisation scheme, weren't they?
Yeah, and say they
1955. That's a long time ago.
Gorsey Bank Crossing, that was, I mean, again, Crossing Keeper's Cottage there, really built to last. I mean,
that's right.
You look at the architecture of the intermediate stations, and again, very much of the era when you built stuff in stone because you expected it to be there for a very, very long time indeed. The design of the station buildings actually all looks very similar, so from a modelling point of view, I can see that being quite appealing. Waiting now while the gates are shut and the third man sprints back and leaps back onto the train. It's quite a leap. We were watching you guys earlier.
Quite a climb, yeah.
It's quite a climb from the ground. Again, something that a lot of people who only experience them from the platform won't realise. But these things tower over you.
They don't realise how far up it is from the ground. No.
Especially as with the best, without being rude, the driving staff are getting older as well.
Yeah.
It's a good way of keeping you guys, keeping everybody fit.
Yes, it keeps you fit. There's no doubt about it.
funny angle for the buffer stop is there for a reason. That is for testing purposes for road rail. They have to be able to stay on the track at that angle, and also they have to go over that grid there, give clearance.
Oh, that's interesting, because there were a number of road rail vehicles in the car park, I noticed. So I presume they're here for testing. So the line's always been used for testing. What was I saying? Anyway, we're now approaching the end of our ride. Thank you very much for your time. And there we are. Thank you very much, Jim. Thanks for a very pleasant ride.
End of the line. Yeah.